Maybe listen to the speaker. No matter what, just let it go.
Pop, persuadable. What is going on, boo-boos? I have a question for you. So if you go to college and you study pyramids and then you can't get a job, are you technically a victim of a pyramid scheme? Terrible. I actually...
Ooh, you suck!
I kind of hate myself for saying that joke. Man, I've been doing nothing but like Google and mad dad jokes lately, and I have just been, yeah, that's a different video for a different time. So yeah, I just want you to know, because there's like some cultural differences. There's some people who actually, there's a lot of people who watch me all across the world, and they're like, what's a dad joke? A dad joke is supposed to be a joke that, like, it's not really that funny. Only like a dad would laugh at it. It's supposed to be a joke where you're like, that's what kind of joke it is, all right? And so how do we measure the top 5 survivors being banned? And the only real way of doing it is by measuring the Identity V League. I'd like to give a shout out to Zappchance, who really went out of their way to look at all of the IVL League material since I think week 5 or week 6 when I started covering it. Went through every single match and logged all of the information out and messaged me that, and that is super kind of you, because you just saved me so much time and I probably never would have done it. So how about we start talking about the top 5 survivors who are banned. Now, we do know that in tournament gameplay, all of the bans are not necessarily carried over to ranked gameplay, but I also think that we can make the argument that for the most part, what we see in ranked gameplay is also what we see in tournament league gameplay to a degree. So I don't think that looking at tournament gameplay in regards to what is selected for ban rates is completely not related to rank to the point where we cannot discuss it. So with that being said, who were the 5 survivors banned the most in Identity V League? Again, starting from like week 5 or week 6 in that competition, especially because of recent nerfs and buffs. It was a little bit more accurate just judging it based on that first week that we started covering it. So again, big shout out to Zap for providing this info. Now let's get right to it. Number 5, Priestess. Now, I am no stranger to being biased. You all know how I feel about Priestess. I think that she's a huge problem. I've made videos on that before. We're not going to get into that in this video, but Priestess has been banned significantly more. We actually saw this in Koa 2, where before her adjustment or buff, she was only selected 5% of the time, but then by the time we got to Koa 2 finals, the selection rate went up to 25%. And ever since that time, she has been a nuisance and very, very difficult for a lot of hunters to have to go against. Remember that in rank and more so tournament gameplay, a lot of survivors try to work their way towards the Priestess, and Priestess sets up portals at choke points in the match. We saw this with the top China team, so Priestess is used and is much more destructive in tournament gameplay for that team coordination, because she has the portals, she has the global portals, and it can be very dangerous on maps like Red Church. It can be dangerous on maps like Sacred Heart Hospital. Also on Lakeside, I'm burping a little bit there. And so Priestess is comfortably at the number 5 spot. Her ban rate was about 55 times she got banned, and that's more so on Ever Sleep in Town, because Ever Sleep in Town was being utilized a lot in that gameplay. She's just a very destructive player. In rank mode, she can still be super annoying to deal with. Again, we're going to see a little bit of a difference between that rank mode and tournament gameplay, but I think most people will agree that Priestess can be very annoying, even if you use the Hunter persona where you reduce the stun duration. That's not why she's necessarily constantly using those portals. It's because she can loop you to death in very strong areas, particularly again in Sacred Heart Hospital. Can just buy a whole bunch of time, even if you have brain dead kiting skills. If you have a semi decent one good portal, it can really buy you 60-75 seconds depending on the team layout, especially against a Hunter that you're going against. So she's very, very good. Now, number 4, the number 4th most banned survivor, and I'm like slowly like reading this as I'm going, so bear with me, is mercenary. Now mercenary and forward are neck and neck, and I kind of just gave up the number 3 spot. The difference was only by 1 point. The reason why mercenary has been banned significantly more is because hunters are getting better at stuffing the kite. You got people like Bonbon, you got people like Sculptor, and the idea is that if I'm using a Bonbon and you're not a mercenary, I can stuff the rescue before you can save. And if you're a mercenary, I can hit you 2 times, 4 times, depending on whether it's a bomb, whether it's a regular attack. Obviously that affects how many numbers it is, but that's why we see mercenary being banned, because it was a popular strategy where you really wanted to stuff the survivors on the rescue, and that's why we saw a lot of those mercenary bans being selected in Identity V League tournament. Now we're gonna go straight to number 3, forward. Now, forward is a heavily banned survivor, and the reason being so is that a really good forward can change the game. We've seen many different strategies with forward. Back in the old days, it used to be when somebody is injured, you go and start harassing. We know that forward gameplay has changed a little bit since then, although that strategy does exist to try to provide some sort of harassment. Usually what they do, and the reason why they're utilized, is because of their rescue potential. Right when Bonbon puts you on the chair, right when Sculptor puts you on the chair, you immediately time it and go for a very long stun. You stun them, somebody can immediately get off the chair and start running, and then you'll have a forward follow up with an additional 1 or 2 chip shots to really reduce your chances of catching up to a survivor. And you got to think of the implications when you have really good survivors such as Mechanic, or more so Priestess, how much time that one long stun can really buy you. Forward and mercenary are neck and neck. I think that they have different reasons for being so. One is because of the harassment, and you got to remember too that the reason why some of these survivors are banned is because the hunters, well, at least in tournament mode, they understand who they're going against, and they know if they're going against the top forward, so it gives them a little bit more luxury of banning them. You're not going to see forward probably banned as much as what you see in tournament gameplay, but he's still significantly scary where some people just don't feel like dealing with him, especially during a queue session where you're being partnered up against a lot of forwards and you're not using a hunter that really counters that forward very well, and you don't feel like taking excitement. So we'll just recap that. So far we have Priestess at number 5, Mercenary at number 4, and Forward at number 3. Now let's get to number 2, is, believe it or not, Seer. I know a lot of people thought that Seer would be number 1, and he could very well so be in rank mode more than Identity V League. But the issue is that the reason why Seer is not banned number 1 anymore is because a lot of people like to use that Bonbon, and they also like to use that Sculptor, and those can counter the Seer. And we know that those are 2 out of the 3 hunters, but wait a minute, so does Dream Witch to a certain extent, depending on whether you're using Patroller or Blink. Some Dream Witches don't mind the Seer, some do, and it also depends on the map and, of course, the character layout. But we also know that bans come before that layout is selected, so we do see Seer being banned number 2. And the number 1 survivor who is banned in tournament gameplay as well as rank mode is still Mechanic. This has been going on since season 1. The devs have done everything in their power to really address this character. I cannot count on one hand how many nerfs, buffs, and adjustments, not buffs, that Mechanic has gotten over the past 2.5 years, and even after all this, Mechanic is banned more than any other survivor simply because of the fast decoding. It's not atypical if you talk to some of the best hunters in the game, such as Call Me Duty and Sprinter, suggesting that if they don't ban a Mechanic, it's almost a guaranteed tie. Even if you go after a Mechanic who put their doll down with a competent survivor team, that is pretty easy to get a tie. And so that is the reason why Mechanic is still banned as number 1, even after her adjustment where the doll doesn't live as long as what they used to. She still just decodes like a monster. She can have an awful 30-second kite, and with a good rescue format, you can still easily pull off a tie to a degree, and that is the reason why you're going to see Mechanic banned. Now, of course, these survivor bans are going to depend on the hunter that you're choosing. We also know that depending on the hunter you're choosing, it's going to dictate the survivor that you're going to ban. As an example, if you're a photographer, you may not want to really have to ban that mercenary because they're a 2-hit kill anyways, whereas a mercenary can be very destructive against a bonbon because they can absorb those hits and still be up to get that rescue in time with Tide Turner. However, you also have the forward comp that you have to worry about with a sculptor, and to a degree a bonbon. Even though you can counter forward with bonbon, there's a lot of methods that forwards can use in order to get that long stun directly off of that rocket chair, and we know that the anti-rescue for some of these hunters they really have to capitalize on. And so to read those numbers real quick, just because my phone I had the numbers on my phone. Number 5, Priestess had 55 bans from week 5 or 6 going forward. And then you had Mercenary at 106, Forward at 107. You had Seer at 133, and you had Mechanic at 212. And one of the things, again, that I want to make very clear is that the ban that you choose is also going to depend on the hunter that you have. I know me personally, when I'm playing as Lizard, I don't always really want to have to deal with a Seer. But if I'm playing Bonbon and Sculptor, I don't really have to worry about that Seer as much. But even so, some of those hunters, they still don't want to deal with those characters. But that is the closest as of now that we can get to in regards to telling you which 5 survivors are banned the most. Again, huge shout out to Zappchance for providing the data, and more videos will come using some of this data to give us a little bit of an idea as to where some of these survivors and hunters lay in regards to where they belong. I also did that hunter tier list. Definitely go and check that out. Thank you for watching the videos, ladies and gentlemen. As always, it's an honor to provide this information to you. Thank you, Zappchance, for this, and I will see you boo-boos in the future. Bye-bye now. That was pretty good. What are you looking at?